let me talk about the last set of tools within the web building toolset, and the Yeoman workflow. When Node became available, web developers started implementing a lot of interesting tools for doing web development. These tools were all built using JavaScript because these web developers were already working with JavaScript. Now that is where we had the origins for Bower, Grunt, and Gulp, which we have already seen before and used them before. Let's now look at the other tool in this group called as Yo. Yo is a scaffolding toolset. What do we mean by scaffolding toolset? I'll go into more details in the next slide. The Yeoman workflow is a workflow designed around using Yo, Grunt, Gulp, and Bower together in order to automate our web development. As we went through building up our website, we have realized that we had manually constructed a lot of those folders and subfolders and then organized our various files and resources into these folders and subfolders manually. What if you can have a tool that will automatically scaffold out your application, meaning that build up the folder hierarchy for you with some starter resources in place, and also set up several of the pieces that you need for automating your workflow, including things like setting up the package.json, the bower.json, and then also setting up your grunt and gulp files, and giving you starter templates for many of the things that you need to accomplish in your web development. This is where the Yo scaffolding tool comes into the picture. So the Yo scaffolding tool allows you to quickly scaffold out a web development project so that you can get started working on your project right away. And Yo makes use of Grunt, Gulp, and Bower together to automate our workflow. Yo provides a mechanism for scaffolding out your next application. So Yo comes with a bunch of generators that are designed for scaffolding out various applications. So for example, if you want to scaffold out an Angular application, there is a generator available for it. If you want to scaffold out a standard Bootstrap web application, there is a generator available for it. There is a big open source community that has come together to build these generators and make them available for other web developers to make use of. You can always find a suitable generator for what you need to get accomplished. If not, you can build your own and then share it with the community. The Yeoman workflow itself, which I'm going to talk about next, is a robust, opinionated client-side stack building tool. And that makes it easy. Of course, some people do not necessarily like the way the Yo builds out the scaffolding. Yes, people have their own opinions about how they want to organize their web development project. But if it works for you, you have something that will get you started very quickly. And Yo also sets up all the tools that you require for your workflow to work together with Grunt, Gulp, and Bower. So, explaining the Yeoman workflow. Typically, the way you would go about using the tools is that you would use Yo to scaffold out your web application. Then you would use Bower to go and fetch all the dependencies that you need for your application. Then you move on to the task runners, either Grunt or, if you like, Gulp, you can use Gulp to speed up and automate your web development workflow. How do we install Yo? As usual, you say npm install yo -g. Again, prefix this with sudo if you're running it on a OS X or a Linux machine. We have already installed bower, grunt, and gulp, so we don't need to install them now. But for a beginner, if you visit the Yeoman site, in the getting started, they expect you to install all these 4. Now that we have installed bower, grunt, and gulp, the last thing remaining is yo, and then you can install it like that. After you do that, you can install some generators. As an example, since we are working on an Angular application, let's go ahead and install an Angular generator. To do that, you would type npm install generator-angular with a -g. If you are again working in OS X or Linux, prefix this with sudo. That will set up the generator. If you would like to find other generators, you can go to the Yeoman site, and then under discovering generators, there is a big list of generators that you can search for to find a suitable generator that will meet your web development needs. Now, let's see how we will scaffold out a new project. To do that, create a project folder or a directory wherever on your computer that you would like to store the files for this web project. So in my case, in my Documents Coursera folder, I have created a new project folder named Angular Example. Then you move to that example in your terminal and then type yo Angular at the command prompt of your terminal. Now, and let yo scaffold out your application. It might ask you several questions along the way, and you can answer the questions as is appropriate for your web application needs, and then yo will take care of scaffolding out your application. Let's take a quick look at how we go about doing this. Here, at the command prompt, you can see that I have set up a new folder named Angular Example. So I will move into the Angular Example folder, and then at the command prompt, I type yo Angular, and then wait for yo to go about setting up my application. So in this case, it asks me the question, should I use grunt or gulp? So I would say, okay, I will continue to use grunt. Would you like to use Sass? In this example, I will say no. Would you like to use Bootstrap? I would say yes. And then it suggests a bunch of Angular modules that I may wish to install within my application. I don't need the animate. I don't need cookies. Resource I would need. Messages I don't need. Route I don't need. Sanitize I don't need. Touch I don't need. So you can select or deselect them by clicking on your spacebar in your keyboard, and then hit the return, and then you would see yo go through a whole bunch of steps. It'll work for quite some time, scaffolding out your application, creating all the folders and the files that will get you started on your Angular application. So let's wait for it to finish doing its installation. Once it is completed, it might point out some packages that it did not install. So in that case, you can simply say npm install Karma, Jasmine Core, and Phantom.js. So these did not get installed by yo. We'll go ahead and manually install them. And so once they complete installation, your web project would have been scaffolded out appropriately for you to continue doing your development. Once the scaffolding is completed, then you can browse through the folders. You would see that the folder structure is pretty close to what we have actually used within our project. My own usage of the folder structure was inspired by the way Yeoman organizes the folder structure. So I have used a similar structure. So if you go to the folder in your computer, so here we have the folder structure for our Angular example folder. You would see that there is an app folder, and then there is a test folder, and there is a node modules. There is a grunt file there. So within the app folder, you would see that the files are organized into images, scripts, styles, and views. So I have pretty much used a similar structure so that it's more easier for you to migrate to using Angular for your future projects. So here you can see that there is an index.html file that has been set up, and inside the views there are a couple of templates in there, and then your grunt file is already set up. Now this grunt file is different from what we had built for our exercise. It uses some more advanced features which you can easily learn up by looking up the specific grunt modules that are being used in this grunt file. Now once the project is set up, you can simply then type grunt serve, and then it'll serve up your project. You can type grunt build, and then it'll build your project for you. And you can say grunt test, and then it'll test out your projects for you. We need to set up the tests in the test folder. So this gives you a quick introduction to how the last tool in the toolset, Yo, works in practice. Go ahead and make use of Yo to see if it meets your web application project development needs.